It's V8 time, folks, and with the 30th anniversary of Bathurst looming, it's time for another Bathurst trivia question. In 1979, the Holden dealer team won by the biggest ever winning margin. How far ahead were they at the checkered flag, and who was driving? Find out later on, right here on NZV8TV. Brought to you by Smiths Group, suppliers of leading automotive brands. Newlon, Maguire's, House of Colour, Spice Hecker, and a whole lot of other stuff to keep your V8 shiny, cool and fast. Not quite standard? Well, neither are NAC Insurance. They understand. NAC.co.nz. On today's show, a hairy-chested, steroid-fueled, race-bred 69 Corvette. And a clean-shaven, well-dressed, mild-mannered earlier version of the same car. And it's Muscle Car Nirvana. We're at Sydney's Eastern Creek Raceway for the Australian Muscle Car Masters. And the Kiwis crash the party. Welcome to the second show of the second season of NZV8TV. And over the next few months, we look forward to bringing you all the V8 action from the street, strip and racetracks around New Zealand. Being our second season, we decided it was time to go international. So we're going to go straight off to the Muscle Car Masters at Eastern Creek Raceway in Sydney.
They are the cars that made men superstars. Vehicles that dominated the Australian motorsport landscape for nearly a decade. And for the first time, they're gathered together for the 4th annual Muscle Car Masters.
Don't be fooled by the poncy Australian voiceover guy. The annual Australian Muscle Car Masters is not a bunch of old dusties in tweed jackets standing around swapping nostalgic race stories. This is the real deal. The Muscle Car Masters celebrates the big horsepower cars that shaped Australasian race history by getting them out and doing what they were made to do, tearing up the track. And we hitched a ride with the huge Kiwi Central Muscle Car contingent as they took on the Aussies. There'll be more of that later in the show, but in the meantime, here's a little teaser from last year's event.
Speaking of budget, how much money did they spend on the Pete Gagan Super Falcon?
More than I've got.
Awesome cars. This was Ford's response to Norm Beachy's Monaro. This was the car that Pete Gagan raced. Acid dip body shells, magnesium door hinges.
Space-age stuff for its time, really.
What a weapon. 600 horsepower from 351 V8.
Remember the battle with Moffat's Trans Am, 72 Bathurst, touring car round? God.
Master Blast now, a chance for some of the great competition muscle cars of all time to not just sit around to be looked at, but to be driven on track as well. And none greater than Norm Beachy's 1970 Australian Touring Car Championship winning 350 Monaro. Kevin Bartlett is behind the wheel today of a car that was the first Aussie car to win the Aussie Championship.
1970 won the Australian Touring Car Championship and was voted Australia's greatest competition muscle car by Muscle Car magazine.
Now here is the original Gibson Motorsport V8 supercar. This was Mark Scaife's car when the category began in 1993. Been through a couple of updates, now in VR specification bodywork.
We give a lot of credit to David Bowden for rescuing some of the great cars of the past. We should mention Peter Champion as well. He's the man responsible for bringing this car back to its glory.
He's also the man these days that runs HDT, that famous emblem of some great cars over history. But V8 supercars now really becoming a part of muscle car history. Brian Thompson's Camaro, Paul Stubber in the HDT A9X Tirana that Johnny Harvey raced as teammate to Peter Brock in the late 1970s, and it still races in the historic Group C category, and it's halves behind the wheel. Bathurst winner in 1983, John Harvey. This car, Pete Gagan's Mustang, 3-time Australian Touring Car Championship winning machine. And like the A9X, this car still races in the hands of its current owner, Des Wall.
Built from a road car in 1967, 41 years ago, still going strong.
An amazing 89 wins from 144 starts, this car, roughly 2 wins from every 3 starts. Quite amazing. Another fantastic part.
And stick around to fast forward to this year's event shortly. In the meantime, Smith's Group House of Colour take us to Taupo and a big block Corvette that's been tearing strips of tarmac out of New Zealand tracks for quite a few years.
It's a 69 Corvette. We bought it in America in 91. We were getting more serious, so we decided to build a purpose-built race car. Yeah. Started off, we had a small block in it. It was about 5,500 horsepower with a Doug Nash, and basically we've just modified it over the years as a hobby. It's got a 510 aluminium big block in it. It's a 5-speed Hollinger and a Harrop rear end, 9-inch rear end. We donated a track sport when we first built the engine, and it was 780. Since then we put a vacuum in a pan and a few other mods, around about 800. It's got the best that money can buy. It's got a Crower crank, Crower rods. It's a World Products block and heads. It's got T&D rockers. It's the best stuff we can put in. Murray Thomas in Whangarei, he's built all my race car engines, and he does a damn good job. It's just an H-pattern 5-speed. You can buy the sequential setup for it. It's about another $3,000 or $4,000, but I'm going to run muscle cars, Auckland muscle cars this year, and you're not allowed sequential gearboxes, so don't talk too loud, but it's actually got Ford brakes off Dick Johnson's supercar.
Okay.
Yeah, Dick was real good. I just went and bought a second-hand setup off him. These ones are actually Brembo with the AP rotors on buttons, full floaters.
Yep.
18 by 14.5 on the rear, and I think they're 18 by 12 or 12.5 on the front, something like that. We've done them in at 1. At Pookie, we can do that without too much trouble on slicks. '69 on the L88 road race cars, and they were actually a factory option, those flares. We put them on there to accommodate the big wheels, and it gives the car a bit different stance and makes it look a bit like a hot rod. They have rules now that you're not allowed to run aluminium blocks, even though Corvettes were optioned with them. I'd dearly love to go to Australia, but so do you. We were talking last night. I've had Corvettes since 77, 78. I know I'm inside out, and I like Corvettes. I've got several different cars, but yeah. The Auckland guys have accommodated me, so you'll see us run there this year in the Auckland muscle cars.
A tough road car to begin with, this Corvette is now tough with a capital T. 800 horsepower, awesome looks. This thing is cool. But Tony, what's up with the multicoloured steering wheel?